back to my channel. This is the first time I'm talking to you guys in this video, and also I know it has been a while since I've posted. I'm very sorry about that, but we are back, and if you can't tell, there is a quality upgrade because I got a camera, guys. I got a camera, so hopefully this will make it easier for me to film more consistently, because filming on my phone is like a bit difficult because, you know, like the whole storage situation and everything. But hopefully we can be more consistent this year. That is the goal. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about books. This is going to be a Wuthering Heights reading vlog. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not sure how much footage I got of me like just reading the book, like b-roll and stuff like that, but we'll figure it out. Basically, today I had a day off, so I went to the movies to watch Send Hope with Donald Ryan because I love Donald Ryan. This hasn't come up yet, but I am a huge Teen Wolf fan. It was the first show that I watched like front to back in full. I just love it so much, and I love Dylan O'Brien, and I'm just so happy he's finally being recognized, and I love him, and I love the movie. It was so good. Rachel McAdams, so good. Like, I really loved it. I was gonna say I'm not a horror person, but I literally have horror movies on my wall. But I'm more of like a slasher person. I don't like Paranormal Activity, stuff like that. I like slasher movies, especially teen slashers. So, you know, Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, like that kind of vibe. I'm not usually like a huge like horror or thriller person. This is more like a thriller. It was very gory at times, but you know what? It wasn't that bad. You know, I'll watch anything for Dylan. Anything for Dylan. He looks so good. I saw Send Hope early in the morning at 11 a.m. I've never watched a movie at 11 a.m. before, but I decided to try something different this time because I don't know, why not? And I actually really liked it because like I was able to go kind of early and then do whatever else I want for the rest of the day. Being in the area, I went to Barnes and Noble afterwards, picked up some books. I was gonna go to a cafe in the area, but there was like too many people, so I went to like a different, it's sort of a cafe, but it has like desserts and stuff, and it's bigger. I love that place, so I just spent the rest of my day reading there. I had already been like 50% through Wuthering Heights before I got there, and I would say maybe I read like another like 20%. It's kind of hard to tell because with the edition that I have, a Strand like edition of the book, so whenever I log how far I've gotten on Goodreads, it's not actually accurate with how far I'm in it, but I would say I'm like 70 or even maybe 80% through the book at this point. I'm on page 166. There it goes. Yeah, whatever chapter that is. Anyways, let's get to actually talking about my thoughts on Wuthering Heights, right? Okay, so one of my goals this year is to keep a reading journal, like in a very simple way, like nothing like too crazy. It's just so that I can be more like critical when I'm reading, because that is something I love, and I feel like I haven't done that as much in my reading after school, especially high school, because my high school was like a very literary high school, and we read a lot of books and we had to like really go in depth with them, and which I loved. I obviously like love literature, love books, so those were like my favorite classes, my favorite things to do. But I kind of lost that a bit after, because I don't know, I guess I was like a little burnt out and I just wanted to like read for fun, whatever. But I always like annotated in the margins and highlighted. I have my own highlighting system, but you can see like I'm a big annotator. Like, I be marking those pages up. Like, people are scared of writing their books. Not me. Not me. This is my bed. So I've actually read Wuthering Heights before. I read it in high school, actually, in like a Gothic literature class. It was an elective, and it was in my senior year, so I did read it and I did remember enjoying it. But when you're reading in high school, and I love reading, I loved those literature classes like I said, but especially when it got to senior year, I was like a little bit burnt out, and I could only really fully enjoy what I was reading without having to worry about like my grades and everything like that, and just other classes. So I did enjoy it, but I wanted to, especially with the movie coming out, because obviously that's part of the reason why I'm reading or rereading it, whatever. I just wanted to reread it and be able to experience it outside of a school setting. Speaking of the movie came out last Friday. Only been like in theaters for what, like 2 or 3 days yet, and apparently that mixed reviews, but I'm excited. I'm going to see it on Friday with my friend Marie, so I'll let you know what I think. To my thoughts, because I'm yapping. If you don't know, Wuthering Heights is a classic. It's by Emily Bronte. It essentially follows Heathcliff and Catherine. So Heathcliff ends up being brought home by Catherine's father. This is when they're kids. He ends up being brought home by Catherine's father to like their family home, and Catherine has a brother named Hindley. The father brings out Heathcliff, and it like kind of offsets the whole dynamic of the household because the father is really fond of Heathcliff. He's almost like taking Hindley's place as like the young man of the house, and obviously Hindley does not like that, so he treats Heathcliff really badly. Catherine and Heathcliff, like, they are very drawn to each other. They're almost like best friends, but obviously in this book, like, you know, it's like a best friends like lovers kind of situation, but it's also so toxic. Their relationship is so hard to define. It's very like toxic, all or nothing. Like, I really suck at summaries, guys. I'm trying to get better at it. I've always hated doing like a summary when it comes to like books and whatever, but I'm working on it. Let's focus on my thoughts, you know, because that's really what we're here for, right? I started taking notes like outside of my like annotations in my book once I hit like 50% in the book, because at that point like there was enough like in terms of themes and like symbolism for me to like expand on. I'm gonna focus on the thing that like interests me the most as a theme, and that is the theme of forgiveness and revenge, and it's very interwoven throughout all the characters, especially to where I got today in the book. This really starts with Heathcliff because of how he was treated as a boy by Hindley. He feels very vengeful towards Hindley and how he was treated. In his conversations with Nellie, who I forgot to say, we're being told the story of Wuthering Heights and Heathcliff and Catherine's and just everyone's stories like in this like area, Thrushcross Grange, through the eyes of Nellie, who is I guess a maid at Wuthering Heights. There's two narrators, so it's Nellie and Lockwood, and we started with Lockwood because he's a visitor towards Wuthering Heights in the present timeline. He is going through Catherine's journals because of like the room that he's in, and he ends up asking Nellie about like the story, how it got to be to what it is like when he's there, like what he's walking into, because once he gets to Wuthering Heights, it's very apparent that there's a lot going on that isn't being said. Like, there's a lot of history there, and everyone doesn't really want to talk about it, obviously, especially because he's a stranger, and like, of course they're not going to want to talk about it. But the theme of forgiveness and revenge, throughout the book you can see that Heathcliff's inability to forgive, which is kind of hinted at when he's a child in a conversation that he has with Nellie, it hardens him over time and makes him a very vengeful person, so much so that like years later when he's an adult, he like does very specific and calculated things to get back at Hindley and make him feel like small, the way that Heathcliff felt when he was a child, especially after Hindley's father dies. That's when the treatment of Heathcliff really gets bad, because obviously Hindley isn't pretending or even trying to hide his dislike for Heathcliff because his father isn't there anymore, and he won't be like punished for it or anything. Like, he can just kind of do whatever he wants, especially now that he is the master of Wuthering Heights as like the heir. I find it so interesting because especially as children, like, you can tell that the childlike wonder and joy that Heathcliff had, and just interest in learning, and his relationship with Catherine, they always were playing around and like having fun and being wild, so much like to the dislike of like everyone else in the house. He lost that along the way, and he's like lost all that joy within him, and his need for revenge like consumes him so much that like he can't see past it, and that's the only thing he can really focus on, and ends up hurting everyone around him, whether it's intentionally or they just become like collateral damage. He's willing to burn everything to the ground if it means that justice will be served. Yes, I found it in my copy. It's on page 56. He's having a conversation with Nellie, and This conversation comes after Hindley has essentially like locked Heathcliff away and like punishing him for, I think it was like playing with Catherine. It was for something like that he shouldn't have been punished for, basically, which was just like a pattern at that time because obviously like Hindley does not like Heathcliff. In this conversation, Heathcliff says to Nellie, "I'm trying to settle how I shall pay Hindley back. I don't care how long I wait, if I can only do it at last. I hope you will not die before I do." That just shows like how much, and this is when he's a child, like he's thinking about how he can get Hindley back. He's been like plotting throughout the book. It's clear that he's really never let go of that, and he's literally been plotting on Hindley ever since. Nellie responds to that saying, "For shame, Heathcliff, it is for God to punish wicked people. We should learn to forgive." Heathcliff says, "No, God won't have the satisfaction that I shall," he returned. "I only wish I knew the best way. Let me alone, I'll plan it out. While I'm thinking of that, I don't feel pain." Through being vengeful and focusing on getting revenge on the people that have wronged him, he is able to distract himself from whatever pain those people have caused him, and he doesn't have to deal with those negative emotions that those people are creating within him, and he's just projecting it onto others, which obviously creates a very nasty cycle. Generational trauma, that's what this book is, just generational trauma. Once I had gotten to the whole like themes of forgiveness and God in this book, I had actually watched a podcast with Jesse Metcalfe. He was the guest. And if you don't know Jesse Metcalfe, that is John Tucker from John Tucker Must Die, which is an iconic 2000s teen movie. And if you haven't seen it, watch it right now. He had asked him about his faith. He was speaking about spirituality, talking about how like if you don't believe in something greater than yourself, like you make yourself God. And he was talking about in relation to how it made him harder on himself, his inability to like see beyond himself and be caught up within himself, blaming himself for everything that's gone wrong in his life rather than being able to like let that go and move forward, and it would consume him. Very coincidental that that theme was coming up in something that I've just watched. He feels so wronged by the world that like he feels like he needs to be the one to create the justice instead of believing that justice will be served in some other way. It just ends up like poisoning everyone around him. Unforgiveness can lead to violence, whether that's like physical violence or just, it's usually mainly like emotional violence in this book. Up to the part in the book where it's after Catherine's died. Also, this is going to be a spoiler reading vlog because I want to talk about themes and stuff, so that will be in the title. So today I got to the part in the book where Catherine dies, and essentially she dies from, let's say, like a self-inflicted fever, and this fever comes after like an argument with Edgar, which is her husband, and Heathcliff. Catherine married Edgar to secure a higher social standing or a more sophisticated version of life, but her heart and her soul, like she says, her soul lies with Heathcliff, and like whatever that is, whatever love, sort of love that is, like, they are one. I mean, I literally just opened to Nellie, I am Heathcliff, like it's that serious. Catherine's talking to Nellie about comparison between like her love for Edgar and what she feels for Heathcliff. She says, "My love for Linton, which is Edgar, is like the foliage in the woods. Time will change it, I'm well aware, as winter changes the trees. My love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath, a source of little visible delight, but necessary. Nellie, I am Heathcliff. Ease always in my mind. Not as a pleasure any more than I am always a pleasure to myself, but as my own being. So don't talk of our separation again. It is impracticable." And obviously that is an issue, because if she's married to another man and that man doesn't like Heathcliff, but she refuses to be separated from him in any like permanent capacity, that's gonna create some issues, and that's exactly what it did. Catherine, trying to keep the peace but also assert her ground, she is feeling so much that she ends up making herself sick. I would like to think it's like the internal conflict of being caught between like what she wants like for herself in terms of social standing and security compared to like her love for Heathcliff. That wouldn't be as secure. Today I got to Catherine's death. This sets off a bunch of different events. One of those events is that Isabella, which is Heathcliff's wife and Edgar's little sister, little sister, yeah, sister. Isabella ends up running away from Heathcliff because he doesn't love her, and he essentially only married her in spite of Edgar because he doesn't like him. Heathcliff essentially marries Isabella to get revenge on Edgar. I also saw as him like trying to prove to Catherine that he's worth being chosen. It's not because he loves Isabella at all, because he literally tells her that like, I low-key can't stand you, and I'm like disgusted with the fact that you even feel anything towards me. Isabella still runs off with him because she's so blinded by love and what she views him as, like a tortured soul. She's romanticizing him basically, and Catherine's like, girl, I know him. That's not your man. That's not your man. Eventually, once Catherine dies, like Isabella, she sends like a letter to Nellie detailing like what her life has been like since she's gone to Wuthering Heights with Heathcliff. She's basically saying that like, I hate it here. I hate to hear this man treats me terribly. He's really told me that he cannot stand me. Once Catherine dies, she runs away, right? She runs away to Thrushcross Grange, which is her original home, right? That's where she grew up and where Nellie is working now, because she ended up being the mistress for Catherine and Edgar. She goes to Thrushcross Grange, basically tells Nellie what caused her to run away, or like the events that happened before she ran away. Nellie tells us that Isabella was like never seen again. She ran away to like some other town. She ended up being pregnant with Heathcliff's child, had a baby, but like never saw anyone again, and then she ended up dying. I feel like Isabella was able to get away from Heathcliff because obviously like she was willing to stay, deluded herself into thinking this man like made change or love me or whatever, but she was eventually able to make the decision to go away and leave him because she loves herself, or maybe just like even like her life, but more so that like she loves herself more than she cares about getting revenge or like torturing Heathcliff. She repeatedly talks about how like she would taunt Heathcliff, especially after Catherine's death, saying that like she doesn't feel any sympathy for him. She enjoyed seeing him sad because of how he treated her, and how he repeatedly said how like Catherine is like the only source of joy in his world and his life, and BC being like, girl, I don't care about you. So she was like, now who's sad? She's like, I don't care about you being sad. And she just really didn't like have any sympathy for him, and would purposely like say things to like get under his skin. She took satisfaction in that, but even though she took satisfaction in that, she wasn't willing to sacrifice any more of herself to inflict revenge on Heathcliff. Like even when Hindley is trying to like kill Heathcliff, she's like, no, I'm not gonna do that because like that's not the type of person I am. I feel like that connects later on to something I'm gonna talk about with Edgar, like a parallel or like connection, but like between those two as siblings and how they grew up. I just see it as her not wanting to end up like Catherine. Like Catherine, like she low-key died because of Heathcliff. Her love for Heathcliff was just like too much for her, and she could never really let go of him and like live like her life with Edgar at Thrushcross Grange. Like she always had this tie to him, like they were intertwined together like forever with her, and it was just like too much for her that it like literally killed her. Isabella doesn't want that, because I found the timing of that interesting, about like how it was basically like after Catherine's death. It's like Isabella woke up and she was like, this is not for me. Then I was going to connect that back to Edgar, because we see Edgar after Catherine's death and he's very sad, he's mourning. Also Catherine ended up having a child, so he also has their child, but Nellie, especially in his like immediate like mourning period, Nellie is taking care of the child and like making sure she's okay. It's a girl, and he calls her Kathy because he doesn't want to name her Catherine. Like he wants her to be separate from Catherine, but he also wants, he enjoys their daughter having a connection towards her, but he doesn't want her to be directly the same, like entangled with her. Yeah, it says The little one was always Kathy. It formed to him a distinction from the mother and yet a connection with her. And his attachment sprang from his relation to her far more than its being his own. He's more attached to his daughter rather than it being like his daughter, but because of the fact that she came from Catherine and it's kind of like the only thing that he has left of her. After that mourning period that Nellie like takes us through for Edgar, eventually he's able to like move forward, partially because of Kathy, his daughter. Edgar is able to move on more peacefully and accept what has happened because he forgives Catherine, because before she died he was obviously very upset with her because she couldn't let go of Heathcliff, and she would constantly force Heathcliff into his company, into his home, and he was like, I don't want any of that, but she was like, no, I need him here. He was like, I'm so over this, and it just caused like a whole big fight that eventually led to her fever and her death. And he also doesn't like entertain Heathcliff at all. Like, he doesn't wish to engage with him any little bit. Like, he just kind of tells like Nellie I'm good on that, like leave me out of it. One thing that I found like super interesting, after Catherine dies, like immediately after, Heathcliff is obviously very like distressed, like he's like losing it, whatever. He basically says that like he wants Catherine to haunt him. He doesn't like want her to be at peace because he'll never be at peace without her. After Catherine's death, and when Nellie's talking about how Edgar is able to move on and like find like a peace within himself even though like he misses Catherine, she says, but he was too good to be thoroughly unhappy long. He didn't pray for Catherine's soul to haunt him. And that's obviously a very clear dig at Heathcliff. Time brought resignation and a melancholy sweeter than common joy. He recalled her memory with ardent tender love and hopeful aspiring to the better world where he doubted not she was gone. He has hope. He's not as in distress as those around him after her death. Obviously, like, he mourned and he was very sad, but he seems able to move forward a bit, I don't want to say easier, but with more hope for the future, and he's not being damaging to the people around him. So unlike Heathcliff, who even after her death, like, he can't stop being like selfish, Edgar wants Catherine to be at peace, whereas Heathcliff wants her to haunt him and be with him forever. Back to their child, and Edgar allowing their child to bring back hope and love to his life. It parallels Hindley in like earlier in the book when his wife dies after giving birth to their child Harriton, and you see throughout the book that he's like terrorizing Harriton, like he almost like drops him, well, he does drop him off, like I think like a stairwell, off like a height of something, and Heathcliff ends up catching him. He just treats Harriton very badly, like he can't love him because his wife is gone. He becomes a drunk. Hindley's like too caught up in himself to see like how he's hurting everyone around him. He also cares too much about torturing Heathcliff and like making everyone around him miserable, and his inability to forgive his father for treating him badly as a child, it doesn't allow him to move forward. He can't like make peace with Heathcliff for, I mean, he didn't even really do anything. It was his father that brought Heathcliff back and then started treating Heathcliff as more of a son than he was treating his own son, Hindley. Crazy. It's very clear towards the end of his life that he is never able to like make peace within himself, and then he ends up dying as a drunk. It's just sad, and it just goes to show that like everyone around Heathcliff is either dying or experiencing negativity in their life. It seems like Heathcliff is thriving. He ends up inheriting the entire Wuthering Heights. I just thought it was just interesting how like the need for revenge and inability to forgive, it affects all the characters differently depending on how they choose to interact with like Isabel and Edgar versus like Hindley and Heathcliff. But like Heathcliff is like on another level because that man is like like revenge like drives like all his decisions. He's been plotting since he was a child. It was very, very serious for him. I was just thinking, everyone who's interacted with revenge and their inability to forgive in negative ways, they've all reached like a negative fate of some sort. And I'm just wondering if like that will continue. And I mean, in a way, that's what I'm thinking. Like in a way, Heathcliff has already experienced that because he's gonna be alone. Like he's obviously like bitter. Is his punishment gonna be being alone and having to live with what he's done, or will he just like never care? Because what would make him care all of a sudden? Like, is he just gonna have like an epiphany, be like, yo, like I've really been bugging out, like everyone around me is dying, I'm alone. Like, I don't remember how the book ends, but I'm leaning more towards the fact that he's just not gonna care. Because like, why would he now? If Catherine's death didn't make him care, then like what will? Like, I really just don't think that man cares. That's all I have to say right now. I just yapped so much. Okay guys, I'm back and it's been a while, but we're gonna wrap this up. Okay, it's been a while since I finished Wuthering Heights, but I'm just going to talk about like the last part of the book, my thoughts, and I also went to go see the movie a couple of days after it came out, so we're gonna talk about that too. And like usual, wrote my notes, and I'm just gonna go through like a couple like the events that happened, like my thoughts on them. Linton has moved in with Heathcliff and is basically teaching him like all like the bad habits and like bad traits that Heathcliff has, and he's like passing it down onto Linton, and it shows up in his friendship with Catherine, because Catherine, he's very like slightly manipulative toward her, and she doesn't fully realize it, obviously because she's a child to some extent, so like she's not fully clocking it, but she like starts to clock it later on. Linton is starting to reflect Heathcliff's bad habits and his manipulative nature onto Kathy. In a way, like Linton is like against it, but he's also very sick, so he can't really truly stand up to Heathcliff. He's a young boy, like he doesn't fully understand like what world he's been brought into, and Heathcliff is obviously very manipulative. Like he's not telling Linton the whole story about things, and he's making it seem like things are one way when they aren't. Linton is just trying to like figure out what to do, and obviously he's making all the bad decisions because he has the influence of Heathcliff like right in his vicinity. Besides Linton, we also have Hareton in the house. He's come a long way from where we've seen him last, kind of. Kathy is now also living with Heathcliff. Obviously, like, that was against her will. She doesn't want to do that. She wants to be with her father, who's sick, and she wants to be with Nellie, but Heathcliff unwillingly took her away from her home and forced him to live with him, Linton, and Hareton. This creates some developments in her relationships with all these boys. So I already talked about how her relationship with Linton changed, because he's obviously on his father's side. She can't fully trust Linton. Now Hareton, since like being around Kathy all the time, you start to notice that he's like starting to educate himself. He was brought up this way purposely because Heathcliff, like he was using Hareton to get revenge on his father. But now we see Hareton, towards the end of the book, he's starting to educate himself, he's starting to read and just like find like different ways to learn. It's partially for Kathy's approval because he wants to be seen of more value in her eyes, but it's also like for himself. But sadly, Kathy does make fun of him. It causes like a lot of tension between them because Hareton, like he's trying to better himself and he's partially doing it for her, and she's like kind of like making little digs at him when he's like just trying to do better, and she's just not being very helpful. And in one of like their disagreements where Kathy is making fun of him and Hareton gets upset, by the end of it, and I'm pretty sure this time what causes Kathy to say this, like what I'm about to say, is because Nellie spoke to her and like made her kind of see a different perspective of like how her actions were affecting Hareton. And Kathy basically just says that like she's so miserable in this house that it's making her take it out on everyone around her, and especially Hareton, because Hareton interacts with her the most. And I just found that really interesting, one because she was like outwardly saying that, which I feel like is such a contrast between the first generation of like Heathcliff and Catherine, where it felt like a lot of times there was so many like little things unsaid that led to bigger things. It just shows how being trapped in a house like that can just bring out the worst parts of you that you didn't really think were there, because obviously like we know Kathy is like a very sweet girl. She's not as like evil as her mother was described. She has more of like a pure heart, but it seemed like once she was in that house with Heathcliff and Linton and Hareton, kind of stripped of like all the things that brought her joy. She was stripped from her home, she was stripped from her family. She kind of like started to embody of some of like the characteristics that Catherine was said to have when she was a child, which I found really interesting. I also want to note about Hareton in this moment, he was able to like articulate his feelings to Catherine about like how upset that she made him, and he didn't just hold it in, which typically he does, which obviously shows growth and also just shows like a contrast once again between Hareton and Kathy and Heathcliff and Catherine, where like there would be little things like that'd be like built up and not said. Like obviously like Heathcliff and Catherine would say like things to each other, but like one, they probably wouldn't say it like the most like healthy way, or they just wouldn't say it at all. Nice to see like that cycle kind of being like broken a little bit with Hareton and Kathy. Like Hareton was able to like be angry, express his feelings of being angry, and then go away and then calm down and come back. And then him and Kathy were able to have like that sort of like heart to heart where like she explained to him how she was feeling and why she was like doing the things that she was doing. We love breaking generational cycles, kind of unknowingly breaking the cycle as well, because they don't fully understand, because Heathcliff is such a liar. They just also weren't there. They don't fully understand like what life was like before like they came into the pictures. Now fast forward basically to like the end. There's like a huge shift in Heathcliff, mainly prompted by the fact that like he's starting to see Hareton and Kathy get along and like kind of, like I said, break the cycle of what he wanted to happen. Like he wanted to create this division between everybody, Linton, Hareton, and Kathy, and Hareton and Kathy were able to find a common ground, just able to get along, and I think eventually fall in love. Hareton and Kathy kind of like remind Heathcliff of him and Catherine. It just leads to Heathcliff like having the realization that he kind of just spent his whole life like thirsting for revenge, and it took over his entire like will to live, and he doesn't have much to say for his life outside of like his quest for revenge. Everything led back to getting revenge on someone that wronged him. Towards the end of his life, he ends up dying towards the end of the book. He realizes that it didn't matter, like none of it mattered. All of that revenge that he was seeking and his need to tear people apart and create division, he was able to do that for like some time, but eventually like people, Hareton and Kathy, they were able to overcome whatever like he threw their way. He realizes that he doesn't really have much to show for all the efforts that he made, and he's like, well, what was the point of that? Because yeah, what was the point of that? Like all that extraness, and what? You're here, miserable man. It didn't fix the core wound that was causing him to do all this stuff. None of the hurt feelings were satiated by all the ways that he tried to hurt people. And he realizes that he's unable to escape from the hurt that he has been carrying his whole life, and it hurts like even more because he sees like the next generation being able to like work past their differences and not hold on to things like he has his entire life. And he's just like, dude, like what have I been doing? Because yes, what have you been doing? What have you been doing? Towards the end of the book, like he basically says like he's happy with the revenge that he inflicted, but he doesn't feel satisfied, which is like goes back to what I was saying. Heathcliff is still Heathcliff, which I found interesting. Like it wasn't like he had this like true sort of epiphany where like, oh my gosh, like I'm such a terrible person and like all that stuff. Like he didn't fully get there. He's like, no, I still feel justified in what I did. It just sucks that I don't feel as satisfied. I just found that interesting, like for him to be like, no, I'm happy with what I did, but like it doesn't feel the way I thought it would feel. when I like kind of like achieved like the end goal. 91. He says, as to repenting of my injustices, I've done no injustice, and I repent of nothing. I'm too happy, and yet I'm not happy enough. My soul bliss kills my body, but does not satisfy itself. He's kind of just like in an in-between feeling. He's like, I'm happy, but like it's not as happy as I thought it'd be. You can like have all these goals and wish for all these things, and you think that once you get like the big end goal, like that is what's gonna make you happy, but in reality it's just like nothing really changes once you achieve that. What you will remember the most is the journey along the way and everything that you did to get there. That's kind of what he's getting at here, but it's for something negative. Still, he's unable to like feel that true peace because like of his inability to forgive, which is something he's literally been struggling with the entire book. And even by the end, like he still can't get over that like one last hump to be able to be like, you know what, he can't fully admit that all the things that he did was like fucked up. He just cannot fully forgive the people that have hurt him. He kind of just dies miserable. And you know what, that's kind of what he gets. Those are my last thoughts on Wuthering Heights. Now for the movie. There's been a lot of discourse on this movie. I went to go see it with my friend Amory and her mom. I'm just gonna say, sue me, I liked it. Oh guys, oh my gosh, sorry, I'm sorry, but I did. I liked it. I kind of loved it, I'm not gonna lie to you. Was it an accurate adaptation? Not even remotely. But the thing is, and the minute like we walked out the theater, both my friend and I said this, that was literally fan fiction. Like that was literally Wuthering Heights fan fiction. And as a girly that grew up like reading fan fiction, I clocked it. I clocked it immediately. I was like, I know what you are. Like, I know what you are. That is fan fiction. Unfortunately, for that reason, through that lens, I was able to eat it up. I was having the time of my life in that movie theater. Yeah, I enjoyed it in that sense. In the sense of being a true adaptation, there were a lot of things changed. And I do understand everyone's critiques. I'm not really mad at the people that don't like it because, like, I understand why you wouldn't like it. Me personally, I feel like it was kind of made for me to like because I love fanfiction. That was literally Wuthering Heights fanfiction. Yeah. So, I'm sorry. Like, I enjoyed it. I did. The cinematography in that movie, beautiful. Beautiful. I'm not a huge movie person. Like, I just don't... I don't want to say I don't really care. But it's not that I don't care. It's just, like, compared to, like, my love for music... like movies is just like I kind of have my own taste with it. But wow, I'm so glad I saw that in the movie theater. It was beautiful, beautiful. Like I kind of almost wanted to see it again because like it was just that pretty, and the costuming and everything, and obviously the soundtrack was so good. Like Charlie, she ate that. I really loved that, and I feel like she really fit. She was a perfect person to choose to do the soundtrack for this specific type of adaptation of Wuthering Heights. My favorite song on the soundtrack is definitely Funny Mouse. It's used in a montage, I'm pretty sure. The song fits so well, like with like the tension, and I just love the tension in the song and like the way Charlie's voice sounds with the production. Anyways, hopefully you saw it. Hopefully you read the book. Hopefully you enjoyed this video because I don't really have anything else to say. I'm trying not to yap unnecessarily. I really enjoyed rereading Wuthering Heights. This is the first classic I've read since high school, and it was really nice to get my brain going again in this way. Reading like dense text like this, I haven't done it in a very long time, and it was fun. Even though it took a while, but I was purposely taking a while so I can really like take it in properly. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all those things, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.